Sup nerds, I'm Tom.
I'm Wes.
And I'm Aaron.
We're Neverboard Gaming. We're taking a look at Deception. We're taking a look at Deception, Murder in Hong Kong by Grey Fox Games.
So this game had a lot of build-up for me. You know, we didn't start playing it the second it came out. It's been out for a little while, and so a lot of people have played it, and I keep seeing it, and people say it's their favorite social deduction game or their favorite party game.
I can see why people would say it's their favorite, because there's just so much pressure put on you if you're the murderer, or if you're trying to investigate and figure out who that person is.
I definitely agree with you, Aaron, that when you're the murderer, you are like sweating like crazy because usually it's really like just you. Like you have your accomplice if you have enough people, right? But when it's Resistance or Werewolf, you're on like a team, right? So like you guys can kind of communicate. If you have the accomplice with the right number of people, it still doesn't matter. The murder item is in front of you. If they look at you and say, oh, but it doesn't matter who the accomplice is or what that guy knows or whatever, it's still the pressure's all on you.
And in addition to that, because the forensic scientist knows it was you, they know what the murder weapon is, and they are trying to point a finger at you. So it's not like you can, fight your way out of a situation or be like, oh no, look at him, he looks funny, because all of the clues are pointing back right at you. And maybe they do point at someone else too, but at the end of the day, you have someone who is gunning for you, that knows it was you, and is trying to convince everyone that it was you.
As the investigator is pointing these clues out, they're so vague though, you can try to, push the blame onto someone else. But it is kind of hard when clue after clue is pointing to you, and you're just like, oh god.
There definitely is like the luck of the draw with the scene tiles. It's very possible that, you keep drawing ones that really don't pertain. Like this one, victim's identity, child, young adult, middle-aged, senior, male, female. It's very possible that there are tons of situations where that doesn't really give anybody any information.
If one of the murder items was a rat,
how is that going to help?
Mm-hmm.
On that flip side, though, there have been several times, especially when I was the murderer, where I picked push, and one of the locations Aaron picked was balcony. And everyone was like, push off the balcony. Everything else, nothing else works. It's that. We hate you. You suck. You lose. You're dead. I was like, yep, that was pretty solid. Like, that's absolutely perfect for the situation.
If somebody wants to take the guess and actually be like, okay, I'm taking my investigation token, it's those two items.
That's true. They are wasting that on a hunch, but it's a pretty good hunch at that point,
And I will even say, I wouldn't even call it wasted, because everyone at the table has an accusation. There were a lot of times I would make an accusation, third round, a third clue, just because everyone was so focused on it, that just to be like, let's just find out. Let's stop talking. Maybe it's the statue in smoke. Maybe it's I'm going to accuse statue in smoke. And that way you know or you don't know, and you can move on, which makes it harder for the murderer, because if the murderer keeps being like, no, it's definitely that one, and then someone accuses it and it's not, and then you need to find another leg to stand on because everything just pointed right back at you.
I do have to say, I actually like the game better without the witness and accomplice. I understand why when you start getting to really high numbers. We did play a 12-player game without that. And, they didn't have the number of cards, so we had to just say, if you got the witness or the accomplice, just you're an investigator, just the murderer is the only one that's different. Mm-hmm. And, after playing that, we saw why they were necessary, because nobody could get anything. There was
so many cards in the table.
Yeah, there was too many items, there's too many options. There were more badge tokens, but it in no way, balanced out. So I understand it, but I think a 6 or 7 player game without that aspect is a lot more fun, because it's just based off of the creativity of the people at the table with the items and the poker face of the one murderer.
However, I think that playing those big games, it's when it's really important for those events to come out. Mm-hmm. The event that lets everyone flip over one card, that's huge, in that it happened in that 12-player game, and the fact that 12 cards got flipped over and you know that one of them wasn't the murder weapon was astronomical.
Because everybody who wasn't the murderer, who had heat on them because of one item, they got to eliminate the thing that they felt was most pertinent. Yeah, and that is true. I really don't think I'm ever going to play without adding the events in. The events are technically, they're a variant, but since it's only a variant for the second and third round, and you're only drawing one tile, essentially, the odds of these coming up aren't very high. So it's what? Why not? Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
One thing that this game does really well is you're never out of the game. Like when you play Werewolf or any other really big social deduction game, there's a lot of player elimination. In this game, you don't get eliminated. Like even if somebody tries to accuse you, like that's it. Like they accuse you. If they're wrong, like they move on, and we just keep trying to figure out who the actual murderer is.
And one other thing that I really do appreciate that this game, in this box, I did not find anywhere in the rules anything about linking games together where people gain points. Just each game is its own individual unit, and that's it. You just play as many rounds as you want to, and then you move on. I love that. I feel like in any smaller game or social game or light, something light like this, where they try to incentivize you to link several games together, like Spyfall does that, Welcome to the Dungeon does that, Don't Mess with Cthulhu does that. I feel like that's something that I'm never going to do, nor do I want to need to do. You know what I mean? I want to just play it. You want to play another round? Okay, good.
Hey,
We're done with it? We're done.
Going back to what Aaron said about player elimination, the other thing I think this game does well is it builds in time for every single person to have a say. I think that was really helpful because sometimes the quieter people in games don't like games like this because they may have ideas and they're not loud and aggressive and just really like out there with their thoughts, and they feel like after a while like I'm just not going to say anything anymore because no one's listening to me. And, Tom's over there being loud and pointing fingers and spitting at people. And, my thought just doesn't matter anymore. I've never felt that way. So in this game, there's the round where every single person has like 30 seconds or whatever time limit to speak and say their mind and just kind of say their thoughts, which I think really does help everyone kind of consider. It gives everyone a chance to speak and not be interrupted. I think it's really important for the forensic scientists to control that. It's like, you, no talking. They're talking right now. Because it helps them get that out there and feel like I participated in this game.
So the only real negatives I would even have about this game, one is, I guess it is a little gruesome. There is that part of the fact that, we're trying to solve a murder. So there's, suffocation. Ooh, what could suffocate somebody? That could turn some people off to be like, I don't want to think about shoving stuff down somebody's throat.
And there's a lot of like bloodletting and like there's gore, like decapitated dismemberment. There's just not like it infers gore, but just bloodletting. There's blood everywhere.
Blah,
blah. Another possible negative to this game is you need to sleeve it, or like our murderer card, it gets shuffled so many times that it's actually starting to wear out. You can kind of see wear in it. So I could see these, especially the cards that players get at the rolls, will get worn out really quickly. It would be kind of insane to sleeve all of the clues, but you might have clues that start to like get really worn out as well.
Yeah, I mean, again, it wouldn't really affect the gameplay too much. It is really just the front of our murderer card that got a little messed up. But yeah, this definitely is a game you want to unbox and sleeve.
My biggest negative for this game, I really loved playing as the forensic scientist where I'm the one giving the clues. That was probably my favorite role to play. And because these clue cards come out pretty randomly, I felt like a lot of times I'd get clues that just had nothing to do with what the murder happened in my mind, and even that the best clue I could give really pointed at someone else that wasn't the murderer. So I had a really hard time being like, oh man, I had one where it was soda and a statue, and I was trying to think like, oh, he slipped on soda and the statue fell over at a hotel, and it was like, what was the state of his clothes? And I was like, well, I guess like disheveled, but somebody else had dirty clothes at the table. So it's like, oh well, what am I going to do here? It's not going to point right at dirty clothes. And if I do neat clothes, then they're not going to think like, oh, a statue fell and it's dirty and they're crushed, whatever. So I think that occasionally it can be frustrating that you get clues that really have nothing to do with it. But that's just part of the game, something you got to deal with.
And I do think that is where you start to draw the line between trying to win. As the forensic scientist, you want the investigators to win. You have to draw the line between wanting them to win and wanting everybody at the table to have a good time. Like the example that I used earlier where I had picked push and Aaron immediately picked balcony, I was almost a little bit like, yeah, I guess you really hit, the nail on the head right there. But I would have almost preferred if you had gone slightly more ambiguous, then everybody at the table wouldn't have immediately pointed their finger, just so the game would have lasted longer, we all would have had more fun and thought about it a little bit deeper. And I guess, and really that's up to your style of play. Whoever is the forensic scientist can make that decision. But I believe, we're kind of overlooking the idea that it's very possible to just say, you know what, I'm not going to help them out that much. I'm going to help them out a little bit. I'm going to kind of be my own team and just, I want to see what happens on the table, mix it up a bit.
Ooh, puppeteer.
Is that a puppeteer, or are you playing a really high piano?
Really high piano. So going into my first play of Deception, I had heard a lot about it, and so many people had said it was like their favorite game. Like a lot of Epic Gaming Night's favorite game Fridays, people keep picking this game as their favorite game of a category. So my bar was really high. I was really like a lot of expectations. And a lot of times with games, I get really let down. Because not it's a bad game, but I set my bar too high. This game, though, blew my mind. Like the first playthrough, even with bars that high, it took me kind of a little while to figure out what was going on with it. It was amazing, though. There was just so much pointing and accusing, and like Tom was a forensic scientist and just like blew it out of the park. And even the quiet people were like getting angry and pointing and accusing and defensive. And it's the best social game that I've played. Not necessarily I'm not going to say it's the best social deduction game ever, but it's the most social game I've played, I think, where everyone's talking, everyone's accusing, no one feels like, oh, I didn't really get a good role, so I'm left out. I'm just a villager in Werewolf, so I'm just going to sit here. Mm-hmm. Everyone has clues, everyone has the same information, and we really do feel like as a team we're looking at all the suspects and trying to narrow it down. And I think that just makes this such an experience to play.
So the first time I played this, I sat down and we, did the first round, and I, was investigator, and then again I was the investigator, and then finally I was the murderer, and I was like, okay, now the game's changed for me, and I was trying to blend in and figure out how to put the blame on other people. We actually played this game for hours, and I never got bored of it. Like I went back to being an investigator, and then I actually got to be the forensic scientist, and it was a lot of fun. Like that actually is the most fun to me. Being that, because then you're like, no, you guys are idiots. This clue is supposed to be that, but I can't tell you that, so I'm going to try and give you another clue. It's a lot of fun, and you're sitting there, listening to people give accusations, and for me, being a little quieter, that's why I guess I like that role more, because I don't have to talk. I just sit there and, try and give the most concise clues I can, even though sometimes you don't have a good choice.
Social games and social deduction games can be really hit or miss. There are only like a couple that I like. I like Resistance, Werewolf, Spyfall, Don't Mess with Cthulhu. That's about it. All the rest of them are pretty much the same. They're just doing carbon copies of those other games. And I'm saying this because a social deduction game really needs to hit, a high bar in order for it to even be acceptable to me. And much like Wes said, my bar was set pretty high just because I kind of have a high standard for these, because I'm like, look, how is this going to compare to the 5 social deduction games that I actually enjoy? And I'm really happy to say that this one is probably one of the best I've ever played. Now, I'm kind of hesitant to say that because maybe I haven't played Resistance or Werewolf or whatever, recently enough for it to really be fresh in my mind. But I don't know. This was kind of a really, really awesome experience because it mixed in the social deduction aspect where you're saying, ooh, I'm trying to hide who I am amongst my friends and lie to them and deceive them. But also there was that sort of abstract creativity part at everyone at the table to be able to take in these clues and say, ooh, what could this person mean by that? Ooh, you could strangle someone with this. You could cut someone with that. You could, again, got a little bit morbid and a little weird, but also that wacky, weird morbidity kind of got funny. We were like, ooh, maybe this guy went to go get a bag of chips from the vending machine, and the vending machine fell on him, and then he pooped his pants, and that's why his pants are dirty. Like, you just got weird with it. And that was so refreshing to really just kind of open up at the table. Even though I was trying to hide that I was the murderer, I could still just make wild, wacky accusations without really, really throwing too much heat on me.
Overall, we cannot recommend this game enough. The bad things we had to say about it don't matter compared to how good this game is.
If any of what we were talking about sounds interesting to you, and it really should, definitely go click the purchase link in the description box down below. It's a good thing we pointed, because otherwise you wouldn't know where down below is. You can click that link and get yourself a copy.
And while you're down there, don't forget to subscribe so you'll never be bored.
Did you guys hear there's an expansion for this coming out?
Oh, really? When is that happening?
I think they're kickstarting it later this year.
Ooh,
wow.
we need that.
What do you think it's going to have? Like, just more clues or more items or something
gonna-
game-changing?
It's probably going to have our faces in it. Nerds,
Sup, nerds?
sup,
Sup,
nerds.
nerds?
We're also very tone deaf.